The Worm Factory 360 in the kitchen for the winter, which I do not like, but that's what we have to do to keep the worms alive, and that's what we're trying to do here. So, looks pretty good. This is the level that really I'm trying to convince them to move out of. You can see quite a few worms on top. I do usually come in and fluff it and see what's going on. I mean, the consistency is great. There's lots of worms in here, lots of young ones, which is fun to see. Some bigger guys. Yeah, lots and lots of little worms, which is really, really cool to see. This is definitely where they feel the most comfortable hanging out. For some reason, they are not as interested in moving down to the feeding tray. I had moved this up to the top, thinking I would get them to move down, and yeah, they don't agree. But it's super, super cool to see so many baby worms. I mean, there's just worms everywhere in this. Big guys. I probably should have not dug around in it first, because now they're probably trying to head down to the lower tray. But just fun to look at it. It's always good, I think, to aerate it a little bit. There's not as much weight on this tray now because it's not the bottom one anymore. So these are definitely pretty flaky. And if I could get the worms out of them, I think it would probably be ready to harvest. So really, really happy with how the first tray went in general. I'm not seeing tons of the black soldier fly larva, so I'm wondering if having it inside has helped with that. We'll see when we flopped it. Oh, look, just tons and tons and tons of tiny little. They don't have the best light in this corner, so you can't really see whether or not there are that's the skin of something, I think. I'm not sure. Yeah, just tons and tons of babies. Wisps, as they're called. So I would be, the only thing that would make me more excited is if these guys would jump down to the bottom and eat what's down there. I don't know what this lump is, but it's got a baby in it, a few cocoons. So overall, I think they've been happy. I keep going back and forth about moving them to more of a tote instead of this contraption, because I just think it has some serious limitations, but I was kind of hoping to get some of these guys out of here before I did that. And yeah, they're just not so interested. Okay, so it looks great up here. I'm gonna set this tray down and go put a kitten away because we have a little helper, and then I'll look in the bottom one and feed down there. Expected, here's black soldier fly larva. This is some kale that's sitting here on top that I kind of tossed in the other day and didn't really cover up, so I can really smell it now. I'm gonna go ahead and get these black soldier fly larvae out and then kind of mix everything around and add some more. Say it's not nearly as processed down here. It's not all casings, but I'm so excited to see little tiny worms up here on top. I mean, again, there's just kind of worms everywhere. I just started looking under this paper that I had thrown in here from their levels. I've really probably only pulled out 10 black soldier fly larvae, so that's great. There's some big ones down in here. I think this is kind of where I fed the other day. And again, I'm still trying to figure out like the speed at which to feed this particular bin. This is a lime because I can smell it now down here in the corner. Next time I will cut them up. I think it's limey. Oh my gosh. Okay, again, this is just more paper. It's coming off of other. Now we got some guys who are worried. I'll just dig them a spot down here. This is definitely not as easily let's see, what I'm looking for is I put cantaloupe in here the other day. And I'm looking to see, sometimes this box gets turned around, so I don't necessarily know if I'm looking the right direction. There are way more worms down here than there were last time. That is super exciting. Super exciting. So I do feel like this is where I fed the cantaloupe, but, and there should be the rind, I would think, in here, but really all I'm trying to do is just go through here, loosen up. I've got some really nasty kale, and I just don't feel like there's tons of actual food in here. There's a lemon. You can smell it now, which actually smells pretty good. So it's one of those things, you know, they say not to use, but then the crazy worm lady did, and I was totally fine. So I thought, okay, great. I would like my worm bins to smell like a lemon, as long as it's not going to hurt them. Ah, there's the cantaloupe. Right there. So there were 3 pieces. That is a tea bag. But the fruit is not quite gone. There are just so many worms in here that I feel like could easily support some more food. And it's still kind of dry. This has been the bin I've had a really hard time keeping wet. It's one of the reasons. There's another cantaloupe slice. So I'm going to go ahead and put some other stuff in here that I know they chow through pretty fast. And it'll add to the wetness. I'm not going to feed on top of the cantaloupe. But, yeah, I just feel like this tray I've struggled with. So anyway, I'm going to make a spot and go from there. And I may actually take some of these and move them up because there's so many worms. And the layer above, there's just not a whole lot of room to do a feeding in here. So I may take some of this bedding, move it up a tray so that there's more room to do a feeding and they can come down, eat, and then go back. But the things I'm happy about is there's just not a whole lot of black soldier fly larvae. I think it definitely actually has helped to have it inside from that perspective. This tray is still pretty compacted. And I don't know if that's because it's the one on the bottom now. So just trying to loosen it up so that the worms are able to get around. That's from the feeding the other day. Okay, that's it. So I always seem to cover up everything before I start filming, but this is probably 10 or 12 grapes, 2 bananas, so half a bag of a sweet kale salad, and I feel like there was something else in here. Oh, and some coffee grounds and a couple tea bags. I feel like this layer is just so much drier than the one above it, so I'm just gonna a little extra liquid in it and then just kind of keep testing, because if I were a worm, I'd want to hang out in the upper bin too. And that's all I'm going to do, just to kind of see where it's at in a day or so. And so I'm just going to cover this up, put it all back together, and see if we can keep these worms alive. I moved a giant amount of handfuls, I would say probably 10 or 11 or 12, something like that, to this other bin, and then mixed it in with the castings. Figure if nothing else, this top tray will process some of this. But I did feed down here. So I'm just trying to keep everybody happy at all levels. Get the water level feeling better in this container, in this tray. Because it does just feel dry. But it is exciting to see. I mean, there are babies down here too. I'm just trying to keep it a little bit, running a little bit moister yet. Make sure I cover up everything that we put in here. All the food has been frozen, and when I started unthawing it, it's not completely unthawed, so I put lots of cardboard down to protect the worms. They should have lots of other places to go. I am going to peek at the sump just to see how many guys have moved down there. I moved a lot up last week, and then we'll be done. This is where I added a whole lot of bedding last week and pulled out. You can kind of see, like, they definitely like to come down here and hang out. There's big guys. There's a ton of babies down here. So probably try to scoop them up, at least the worms, and put them in the upper level, and then leave them alone.